Oh, come on. Oh, here we go again.
So I noticed that Stephen has changed his background image for variety.
Trying to do a different image for each one.
Oh,
okay, hopefully, fingers crossed.
Sue's might be different too.
Sarah Bruce and Oliver Hill are already giving us a hard time. Okay, I think we are actually live. I certainly hope so. Good afternoon, Frankston. My my deepest apologies for the technical difficulties that we had. We are running a little bit late, and again, as I said, I do apologise for that. We are live now. Thank you, Oliver. Oliver, you'll be pleased to know that today's photo background is from the West Ward. I don't want you to get nervous. I wasn't scoping out opportunities there, but I do like to visit other parts of our great city from time to time. What I'd like to be able to do before we kick off our conversation around arts, events and festivals in Frankston City, I did want to give the opportunity for Sue Baker to properly introduce herself. We had a much more casual conversation on Sunday. But Sue, I just want to give you a few minutes to talk about yourself, your campaign, and then what you hope to achieve in the North West Ward.
Great, thanks very much, Stephen, and hello everyone. Nice to be back again. So yes, Sue Baker, resident in North West Ward. Very excited to be entering this interesting time to put myself up to be a council candidate. I'm on a very steep learning curve, which always excites me because that's my background, my professional background, and have really been enjoying getting out and about. You will see me on my bike if you live in the North West Ward. I have a fluoro yellow jacket, a pink helmet and a red bike. So if you see me, please do wave and I'll be delighted with that. So in terms of the North West Ward, there are a lot of things that have been going on in there. And I did have a chat with one of the current councillors about some of the initiatives that have been taken. And there's a lot of great work that's been going on, things around some of the infrastructure projects in Coringle and Frankston North, around some of the sports clubs. I cycled out past Pat Rollo's oval this morning and had a look at the sports building there. So I know that there's some work that's in train for some of those facilities, and Frankston North in particular needs some TLC and some support. I think there's a bowls club in Belvedere Bowls Clubhouse is one of those on the list, and along with the Monterey Pavilion. So what I'm saying here is that part of my approach to standing as a candidate is to support and continue the great work that's been going on within the ward already. And there are lots of more local issues. I know along the Seaford foreshore there are some conversations about heights of buildings, there's sort of preservation of the foreshore, there's work to be done on access, particularly down at Long Island, perhaps boardwalks down to the beach, improving toilet blocks, you know, so there are lots of local issues to have a look at and support, and I'm really keen to carry on that good work and support that good work where it's endorsed by the community. Coupled with that, though, there are some really big vision issues and opportunities with Frankston, and this is where I've been doing a little bit of homework, lots more to be done, and I'm very keen to support some of the 2040 and beyond vision aspirations for the city around generating a lot more employment, possibly through the Carrum Industrial Precinct, other opportunities to grow that or not. We've got the green wedge issue there, so there are lots of debates and lots for me to learn about that, but certainly as a growth area, which Frankston is predicted to grow, there are certainly some bigger projects to look at. The whole of the Monash University, us becoming more of a university town, the precinct and how that could impact the central business district for Frankston. So I'm very keen to support local people, economy, bring more people in to the area, which in turn helps us invest more and generate more money for projects locally. And my background in working with organisation development and large-scale projects is looking at the strategic and then focusing on how you implement that at a local level, and really listening to what the customer wants, which in this case is our community. So I hope that gives you, for now, a little bit of an insight into where I'm at with all of this.
Great, thank you very much, Sue, and we'll get the opportunity as we have more conversations to get deeper into some of the real issues. And obviously today we're talking arts, events and festivals. Brad, this is the first Candid conversation you've joined with us as well. You're running in South Ward. We've had a few conversations, and certainly just so people are aware, Peter and I have agreed to work with you as well to try and get a fresh start for Frankston. Brad, you are already known in the area to a degree, but there'll be a lot of new residents who won't know you as well. So do you want to just take a couple of minutes as well to introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you. Brad Hill is my name. Frankston resident, former councillor. I have, I've lived in the area for 20 plus years. I've got my kids here, my family here. I have 5 children that I've raised in Frankston. So I'd like to think I've got a vested interest here. Certainly no intention of moving, and either of my kids, which is nice to see. They've they have an appreciation for the local area as well. So yeah, look, you mentioned people would know me. Yeah, they would know me from my previous term on council. I have a long association with the Frankston Football Club, where I was on the board there for a while. I've been involved in other organisations as well, because what I learned in my first term of council, I learned the meaning of the word community. I knew the dictionary definition, but I didn't really understand what community actually means until I got elected to the council, and I discovered what a rich place this is. And it isn't just the beach. It isn't just the natural beauty. It's the people who live here, and there are some terrific people in Frankston who are doing amazing work that you've never heard of, that are striving to make this a better place. And that's what inspired me after my term of council to start to become involved in these other organisations. Before that, I hadn't. I went to work and I lived at home and I did my shopping, and that was about it. Whereas, what really made me love Frankston as much as I do today is all of that. So, I want to be able to continue some of those things and more. Frankston needs ever greater governance and focus on the community from the council. The council's the closest level of government to the local people, is what I like to think. And it's the council that advocates and funds our community facilities, the sporting clubs, the community centres, the community houses, the facilitates coordination meetings of various charities, for example, where they come together and discuss where the holes are and try to plug them. That's who I am. That's what I'm about. And I'm hoping that I can be re-elected and continue that work.
Right, thank you very much, Brad, and looking forward to working with you and Sue over the continuation of the campaign. We will, just so everyone knows, we will be bringing other candidates into these conversations as time goes on. I think at last count there were 11 or 12 candidates that we were aware of that were sticking their hand up for South Ward, slightly fewer in Northwest Ward and slightly fewer in Northeast Ward. But we are reaching out across the city. This isn't just about South Ward, and it's not just about us, but we're reaching out across the city. So back to today's topic. I want to talk a bit about arts events and festivals. Previously, I'd never really thought of them as a local council issue per se, but the more I've looked into what council's responsible for, and as well as seeing some of the festivals and events that we've experienced over the last 4 or 5 years, I thought it was worthy of a conversation. We do have a great arts community in Frankston. And I have to confess, I'm a little bit biased towards arts because my mother is also an artist. But you know, I know that there's an exhibition that's going on even during COVID at the art gallery, photographic exhibition where you can at least view things through the window, even if we can't actually go in and so on. So Peter, perhaps you could open up with your thoughts on what we're doing well and what can we do better around arts events and festivals in Frankston City.
Okay, look, there are, thanks, Stephen, there's a number of festivals that are on. I mean, February, we don't know what's going to happen, but there's the Waterfront Festival kicks off in February, but we're not sure at this stage. I'm very pleased to hear about how the COVID case numbers are going down each day. I have sort of both a vested interest, of course, as one of the community and sort of a clinical interest as a biologist. They talk about this on the news, and of course I'm quite interested in the rates of multiplication, etc. The Waterfront Festival is, I like the Waterfront Festival. I think it's a great festival. I also like the
Festival of Lights.
The big picture. The big picture is it's a great event as well. One that we sort of touched on, I think, the other day, my memory serves me right, is we could do with a locally sort of homegrown food and wine type of thing. Now, we did have that. We did have one of that sort of thing. I remember going to one 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago. And I think we talked about, we have discussed the concept of instead of bringing things in from all over the place, let's make it Frankston local. Let's make it Frankston food and wine fest, if you like, having local restaurateurs with their marquees, etc., and showing off what people locally can do, restaurants, etc., can do for Frankston. This will bring people back to those restaurants. I would guess they'd be prepared to give you food and wine and more the sample thing at a nominal price rather than a sort of a profit grab, because they know that if they impress you, they're local, you'll go to them, you know, habitually perhaps. And there's a number of great restaurants in Frankston, of course, so I think they throw their hand in. One that I'm yet to try, I almost tried the other day, was there's a new sort of a Turkish one, virtually opposite the cinemas. And that would interest me, but gee, I'll tell you what, it's popular. So you get on at about midday and you might get something by 7 p.m. Put your order in. Got to put your order in online. But if you get a number of those, Turkish, Greek, you know, Asian of various types, there's a lot in Frankston, and I think that sort of Frankston-centric type of focus would be a great thing for the city.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you there, Peter. You know, the food truck festival, I think, was an interesting idea, but it brought a lot of vendors from outside of Frankston in. And I think, you know, anything we do now, we've got to look through that kind of COVID recovery lens as well. So the more we can do to boost our local suppliers, our local cafes, our local restaurants, the better.
What it's all about. Yep.
Yeah. Sue or Brad, would you like to any other reflections on that?
I know the council has the opportunity to give out grants for different community events, and of course then there's a whole process depending on whether it's a small or large event to organise all the health and safety and waste management aspects of running events. So I'm I'd be interested to see whether there's an appetite for people to run events in other parts of Frankston. So not just generally just coming into the CBD or down to the foreshore there, but we've got some wonderful parks and reserves. And as we come out of COVID-19, we may be limited in terms of how many people can get together and what those numbers are going to be. So organising smaller local pop-up events may be a way to go, and supporting local artists or, as you say, food and wine events. I did hear on the news, I think it's up in Brisbane, there was an approach to do cul-de-sac concerts.
Yep.
Really caught my imagination. So, and we've got so many cul-de-sacs, certainly where I cycle, and I'm finding my way around. So, you know, I think there's an opportunity for people to get creative and come up with ideas about how can we get the community out together, celebrating, whether it's in reserves, whether it's in the cul-de-sac, depending on the size of events we're allowed to have. I think there are a lot of people, resources that could come together just to make some nice gatherings, so that sense of community and being out and about when we can is to kickstart. That's
I mean, the kind of the idea of sharing the love around other parts of the city is quite an interesting one, because certainly most of the events do concentrate on the kind of CBD type area or the foreshore area. I know that outside of Frankston, the Waterfront Festival is very well known, but I don't know if things like is it the Festival of Lights when we have the Christmas tree and so on. I don't know how well known that is outside of Frankston. If we're going to attract others to come here as well, it kind of needs to be linked to a much more thoughtful and strategic approach to arts and events and festivals. Brad, you've been here 20 odd years.
Yeah. Well,
you'll have seen a lot of events and festivals and approaches to arts come and go. What are your reflections?
We've had some enormously successful ones. The Waterfront is one of those, the Waterfront Festival. You know, one of the reasons that we have these festivals right in the middle of town is because that's where all the public transport comes into. You know, there are other events. The other one that's actually quite a success is the Pets Day Out up at Coringal.
Okay.
That's always worth a look, even if you don't have a pet. The wide array of animals that turn up there is well worth a look, and there's some, you know, magnificent specimens. You know, I like the idea of a food and wine festival. You'd have to get the local producers and restaurateurs on board, and that's the tricky part. The council is unable to do it all. You know, the council can coordinate and bring them together, but without their support, it's not going to go anywhere. And I'd also perhaps point out, I don't think we actually have any wineries in Frankston, but I tell you what, we've got a few pretty nice microbreweries.
Yes, we do.
There's certainly a gin maker up in
Seaford. And a gin maker, that's right. So, you know, maybe a beer festival. Maybe a beer festival. If you haven't tried all the local breweries in the Frankston area, once they open up again, it's well worth some of your time. But look, look, festivals are great because they bring people together. They do cost money. They aren't cheap. It is our rates. We just have to be, I think, a little bit more strategic, a little bit more practical, a little bit more considerate of what we do put up, because, you know, funds are limited. We're trying to keep rates down, but, you know, we have had some duds. I think the last food truck festival was just, you know, quite ordinary, to be honest.
It was
too expensive, wasn't local, but yeah, you know, it's all about community, and I agree with you totally, Stephen. We have to look at it through the lens of a COVID recovery.
Yeah. And festivals are a part of obviously part of it. There's that kind of wider question around arts, and Frankston is well known for its investment in arts, whether it be through the Arts Centre. So it's got dramatics going on. I've seen a few interesting school concerts there. I can't say they were all my favourites, but there's certainly been some interesting ones that I've had to go to there. But there are also some high production things that come through there. We've got the McClelland Art Sculpture Park as well, which has got some excellent examples. Just a couple of the questions that are coming through is, if you kind of look at those things all together, what's the benefit for the city for bringing these things in? Are we actually just paying money out for others to enjoy things? And we should be enjoying the city anyway. But what's the kind of, how do you then look at what's the cost benefit of that? But also, one of the questions we've got from one of our viewers is also, how do you get that balance between free events, retail or sales-based events, ticketed events, and so on? And I'm very fortunate in that I spent a number of years living in Edinburgh, which is the festival capital of the world. Adelaide may try and lay claim to that, but we know it's not true. They have ongoing festivals all year, except in the depths of winter. But there's a kind of, it's linked back to the city's overall strategic plan.
If I can, if I may have a crack at answering that,
yeah, sure.
One of the reasons Edinburgh has all those festivals is to attract people to Edinburgh, right? It isn't all about, in Edinburgh, it isn't all about a festival for locals. It's about raising the profile of Edinburgh, having people come in. They come for the festival, they stay in local accommodation, they spend their money there, they spend their money in restaurants, and they hire a car, whatever they do, and then they go home again, right? So it's about raising the profile of Edinburgh, and it's about injecting some money into the economy. And this is the economic development angle, if you like, for some of our festivals, for even the campaigns that the council run. You might have noticed the flags down the end of the freeway on Eastlink.
Yes.
To try and to raise the profile of Frankston and to get people to come in. But I reckon you can do that, and you can also provide local festivals for local people for them to enjoy. The the shining example is the waterfront festival. Absolutely.
Yeah, and having a mix of locally focused versus bringing others in, who can come into the city and inject more activity and life into it. So there was, I'd invite you to maybe share your views on it. And just before you do, Maureen Griffin has just pointed out that apparently Seaford used to have a zucchini festival. So I don't know if that's something you might want to resurrect, but what's your perspective on this?
Well, I was having a look at some of the material that the council puts out already, and there's a great brochure called Self-Guided Driving, Walking and Cycling Tours, which covers all sorts of aspects of Frankston already. So the murals, the street art, and you've got all the sculptures, the cultural heritage, the nature reserves, and I was just sort of reminded and delighted to learn all these fabulous within Frankston. So how do we really make those known to people so that you've got local people enjoying them, enjoying the investments? I like the mural that's behind me at the moment. I keep coming across them in different places. They're a real delight to go out and find. Versus, can they be used as a way of attracting tourists in? And is that a strategy that the council wants to have in terms of a revenue stream over time? We are the gateway to the peninsula. We have a lot of people that are going down to Portsea and Sorrento and over to Western Port Bay. So, how can we entice people in to come and spend money here, perhaps stay here? So I I think that's really worth looking at for generating some traction, for getting people interested in us as a city, but equally for locals who are artists themselves, whether it's music or art in some way, being able to share their skills, hone their skills, have a platform. I think that creates a great energy within a community as well. I'm a big fan of writers' festivals. I've lived in a couple of places where they've been run really successfully, and you use a cafe for a 30-minute chat about a book with an author, so that generates some traction into the cafe, or maybe we'll be out on the pavement having a conversation. But it's that type of activity I think is really great. Local authors, local people getting involved in that, but also getting people in. So yeah, I think the arts aspect of the city has local and a broader reach in terms of its potential for generating some income for the city.
I'll just make a point there, if I could, Stephen, and with what Sue's saying, I absolutely agree. I mean, Robinson's bookshop down there in Frankston, they have often had authors. They've got authors in to sign books, and of course they've got their cafe. So more of that could be done. They've made an effort by themselves, and I think it's great. It does actually remind me that the whole thing, the good questions that might come in. How much do you spend? What are you going to get out of it, really, et cetera, et cetera? These can be difficult questions to answer because there's some intangibles there that can be a little bit difficult to quantify. But when you're talking about, locally, what do you get out of it? Well, I think you can get a lot out of it for people who live here, if it's well run and well done and something that people want to do. I think it really helps morale of the place, especially coming out of COVID. Interesting, the Festival of Brisbane. Yeah, great. I was thinking exactly the same thing. The friends I've got up there. What a wonderful thing to do. They took it out to different places, in the city and the surrounding suburbs. So smaller groups, they could do it. It worked. And that just shows the inventiveness, and it worked well. The other thing of scale is that, of course, when you're bringing things in, want to bring people in from outside, there's a scale aspect to it and to what you do, an event that people will travel to Frankston for. Now, that's, possibly linking, with Edinburgh sort of thing, although people go from all around the world there, of course. But if you want people around the state, around the nation to come to Frankston, well, you have to put on a sort of a scale of an event. So it would take a lot of careful planning and thinking about what is done. And that's where we listen and work with others who know a lot about this to try and get some of these events going. It would be great. You might start off sort of small, attract people from around, country towns have done it. Well, Frankston could do it. So that's what we've got to do. And then you could scale up a bit. So it's a big field to talk about.
And Nikki Foster's just remarked that you need to have professional companies or people, either people or companies that understand how to run these kinds of events. I think the role for council is, and I think one of us have already touched on this, the role for council is around coordination and mobilisation. And actually, you want the professionals then to take forward the implementation of that. I know there's a small number of companies in the Frankston area that do events or provide AV and so on. We know that the art sector and the event sector has been smashed by COVID, probably more so than any other sector. And I know a few people who've sadly either been put on JobKeeper or made redundant as a result of that, and literally overnight businesses disappeared. I would hope that this would become part of what would be a part of a COVID recovery, I guess. And I really like the sound of that combination of local events that are for the wider sort of Melbourne or Victorian community, but then maybe there's something within that you try and link to a much larger event. So if I'm thinking of, for example, the Women's Football World Cup or Soccer World Cup, in 2023. Why not start planning now for a Frankston-based Festival of Women's Sport?
Yeah.
Something like that. So that we're then looking at what's going on around us in order to link that and really get people excited about the opportunities that presents. Just on that, a couple of people have been commenting that maybe we need to stop talking about ourselves as gateway to the peninsula and more about being a destination. I think that's a really interesting point. I think it's probably a pretty good point. And Maureen Griffith has also asked about, you know, what events for different ethnicities in our community. We're a pretty homogenous population down here. There's not a huge amount of diversity, but we do have pockets of people from Sudan, from India, from Sri Lanka, from China and Thailand and so on. So I'm just going to throw that into the conversation. And
I think if you want to, you know, have a festival to get people in, and look, I might add the other reason to get people in is also to try and inject some life into our streets. I don't know, you know how many times I've heard from people, and I agree 100%. Our streets are rather derelict. You know, it's, we need that to be livened up. But you know, if you want a successful festival that attracts people from miles and miles around, it's got to be something a little bit unique. I mean, there's various, you know, community festivals, music festivals, whatever. You know, we need to be a little bit creative, I think, and come up with something a little bit edgy, a little bit different. You know, whether that be, I don't know, a blues festival or whatever, but just something that we don't already have in our region. And look, I note the comment you made earlier about having an external company involved. The council has an events department, and I think they do a pretty good job with the events they run. You know, again, we keep talking about waterfront, but you know, they are able to do that. What I've noticed when there's events that are externally run, that company has no interest at all in attracting people to Frankston. They're all about running an event and extracting the most amount of money as they possibly can out of it. Now, let me give you a couple of examples. One is the food truck festival, but charging locals to come in, charging the trucks to be there. They and that's it. They weren't about marketing Frankston at all. What they're all about themselves. We had a market down Young Street in the last 1 or 2 years on a Saturday afternoon, and they were running that market, and they were all from outside Frankston. They charged them all to come in. They took their money. They left. They did not have the local traders on board, and most of the traders, when that market was on late on a Saturday afternoon, the traders were closed. Right. So yeah, we need to be conscious that what the focus of these things is. It's not just about having an event. It's got to be integrated into the fabric of our community. And yes, we do need expertise from time to time from outside sources. And the terrible word that gets thrown around a lot is you're spending money on consultants. Well, you know, occasionally, yes, you do need a consultant. I don't employ my own lawyer. I don't employ my own plumber because, you know, I don't need them all the time. I bring them in when I need them, right? And yeah, so look, we do need that expertise, but really important that we don't hand it to them to run, because from what I can see, that just doesn't work.
I think there's got to be a real sense of community ownership of the events themselves. Otherwise, it's just somebody else showing Casey what they want to do.
Yes. So, I mean, you know, the Frankston Music Festival is pretty much independently run with council help. Terrific. You know, that's an excellent initiative. You know, more stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think
So,
council could probably set up the criteria for an event and what the expectations are of the returns and the broad parameters, and then invite some tenders or some proposals for how best to meet those, and then support the best of the ideas that come up. I know they already provide grants to different artists to support people. That's part of the current structure, whether it stays the same or gets altered. But I think it's invigorating and stimulating the ideas in the first place that's key, and we'll have a lot of talent across Frankston in all sorts of different areas. There's a few streets I walk down and I hear someone drumming or playing a guitar, and I think, gosh, okay, I'm glad you're still practicing. But there'll be talent out there, and these creative people will have some fabulous ideas, I'm sure, as to how they can busk or set up some pop-up events, or or even come together to collaborate for a big event. I'm sure we've got some talent out there who've done that in the past.
I was just going to throw in something else, if I could. The events that other people do, religious groups or cultural groups. There's not a lot around, but yeah, that Indian temple, where is it, Dandenong on Frankston Road?
Carrum Downs, yeah.
Yeah, Carrum Downs. Look, I've just wandered in there on occasions when they were having some sort of a festival, and I can't remember right. There's Diwali. There's another one that's sort of a water event where basically it's much, you throw water over each other, and I think it was great. And there's another one, I think it was the same one or another one with blue powder, and you go in there and you're in it and you're just accepted as part of it. And of course they'll throw some water over you and each other, and it's usually a hot day, so it's good actually. And there's the blue powder one, there's the Indian food, which I love, fantastic. So those things are great events to publicise as well. You'd work in with the community, but they seem to be very embracing of anybody who comes in there who may not be strict, part of their community in an everyday sense. You're most welcome, and anything like that we can encourage. There's some multiculturalism in Frankston, and I think it's to be celebrated. We have a lot more Asian groceries these days, which is good. You don't have to travel up to Springvale anymore. So any of those sorts of festivals are worth sort of looking at as well, and helping out a bit, maybe help, and being involved.
Yeah.
If these things are already happening, then I don't think I've seen very much from the council to help in promoting those events. Right. So the council has a newspaper they issue 4 times a year, the Frankston City News, or obviously in your letterbox, probably the only newspaper that's arriving in your letterbox these days with a community focus. Why not, I think there is a what's on column in that, but it's really only the council run events. I can't see why we can't promote other run events like that Indian one you talked about.
Well, I think that the events that have always had the most longevity are the ones that have started as grassroots events.
Yeah.
And so whilst we might have, Frankston City more widely, to have grassroots events kind of come together and pop up, I think is the way to make it sustainable in the long term, because people have an emotional investment in it, and it's not all about money, but having that emotional investment in making it work and making it successful is so important. And I think that's the kind of support then that council could get in and provide to those grassroots things. And there's a way of also, I suppose, experimenting with the ones that might be able to be grown into something bigger versus the ones that might just remain a very kind of small local niche type of event. So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, I'll tell you what I was just thinking about was how some events have been pivoting to online, and we ought to all give a shout out to the Mayor's Picnic that's happening on the 20th of September. So that's a great example of still wanting to maintain what I believe is a very popular event for people, and there's been a lot of pre-planning and preparation and recording of different things to go out and stream on the 20th. So that's a great example. Yeah, I think there's lots of opportunities out there. Council needs to have a listening ear to different ideas, but it built into a strategy over time. Yeah.
One of the topics that's popped up in the chat as we've been talking, and I've not been avoiding it. I just kind of think it needs a kind of bit of a discussion itself. Is this question of markets? We've had markets. You talked about the Young Street market. There's been the Sunday market. I now think that stops completely, which didn't have a great deal of diversity of things there, or had very great diversity, nothing that linked it together. Most sizable cities, or cities of the size of Frankston, do have a sort of proper market, at least sort of once a month or every 6 weeks. What would you want to, if we were to kind of try and reinvigorate the market component on a regular basis, what sort of market would you want to see?
Well, Seaford has a monthly market, and I'm sure all the stall holders who normally turn up there are really itching to get back, and so that's a significant established event. Whether we could run things in other parts of the city, I mean, I have headed off to Redhill Market, and I'm sure a lot of the stall holders who turn up there would be really delighted to have another venue or location to go to. So whether it's the foreshore or the CBD, very much open to ideas on that. I keep thinking of Monterey Reserve. There's a sort of covered area in the centre of that park, and that could definitely lend itself to a market or some kind of event. I think it was the venue for a Pride event, I was told, in years gone by. So there are places to bring people together, specialty markets, fruit and veg. We might be having to do a lot more things outside.
I think you'd ask the community what they want. What's the kind of market that you would attend? What's your view on the current markets? There is the Dolphin Sunday market, which is currently stopped because of COVID. I understand they intend to relaunch. They've had a change of management down there. That market is run by the Frankston Football Club. It's not a council event, and they've got some new management down there, and I understand they're going to, they're very understanding of the issues with it. They're going to relaunch it. There's another sort of art and craft type market at Beauty Park. I think once a month. You might have seen that. And we've got Seaford as well. So I don't know. It seems to me that it's a little bit disjointed. We have a little bit of everything, and I think a combined market that interests people. I think So I'd urge a consultation process with the community. What is it you want? Is it cheap fruit and veg? Is it a boutique style, fine food type market? Is it trash and treasure? Is it arts and crafts? Is it what have you? Because if it's not providing what the people want, then it's not going to work.
I think you can look at a few of the markets that we've had too, and you can gauge over time, how many people are attracting. So I agree with the consultation. There's been a few that, they were sort of mixed markets. The one down at Beauty Park, I think, was a bit mixed. Most to wander down there. I mean, it was good to have some nice coffee carts, but there was specialty sorts of foods and jams and this and that. That you could buy, but it also, I think, had vegetables. It was a very mixed thing at Beauty Park. I think it worked quite reasonably well. But consult with the community, see what they like, and you can basically say, there were these sorts of markets. Do you remember them? What did you think? Do you think it could be something else, something different? So ask for sure.
And look, I think there's the word there that all three of you have touched on, which is about that consultation, which is definitely something that needs to. And it's not just about, arts and events and festivals and markets, but actually across the board, we need much better consultation. I think in this space of markets and arts, events and festivals, absolutely we need to do that. I think the other thing that's probably quite important is, we talked about, okay, well, what would we do differently instead of the food truck festival and get local supplies, noting that, of course, we don't have any wineries that any of us are aware of within Frankston, but maybe there's some thinking we need to do this. Maybe there's some thinking that we need to do beyond just the Frankston boundaries, and think of it in terms of, well, what could we do that could also engage with other municipalities as well, so that we've obviously got the Mornington Peninsula next door. They have a bunch of festivals and markets and those kinds of things themselves, but they do have some fantastic wine producers through there, which, coupled with Frankston's brilliant microbreweries, and I haven't sampled the gin yet, but we'll get there at some point.
That spirited lot, yeah.
I'm prepared to involve myself in a consultation on that, certainly.
Market
yes,
research.
definitely.
Market
I'll report back.
But so I think, I think whilst we want to keep most of our focus on what can we do in and with Frankston, also keep an eye on what's the regional picture there as well, because we've got farms on our doorstep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Look, I think, and that's part of the connecting Frankston with the region that's surrounding it. So I think it would work very well. A good idea to do that.
Brilliant, thank you. I might wrap it up there and just invite some closing comments. Before I do, I did have a question earlier on, and I did say we'd circle back to it. Richard Smith's asking about the rate hikes that have gone on, and commented that he has a relative in a neighbouring municipality, or almost neighbouring municipality, where they have a property that's much higher in value but pays less rates. So maybe as part of the wrap up, a closing comment about arts, festivals, events, and then if you wanted to remark on the rates piece, we will have to come back, I think, to another candid conversation on finances and rates and charges and so on separately. But I just wanted to make sure that we addressed Richard's question as well. Sue, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I think the whole issue of rates, from my perspective, needs some research and looking into. It's clearly a revenue stream of significant importance for Frankston. And there's that, attracting more people here, we get more revenue in, but it's also with the stimulus packages and recovery, we've got to manage all of that with the money that we've got. I wasn't obviously involved with the decisions that the council made over their current decisions to make the changes that they did, and some may be outside of their control in terms of state government led. So I'd certainly like to do a bit more research on that myself. But rates are an issue to get the right balance with, and I think part of it is communicating really clearly with the community on why decisions are made, perhaps rather than just receiving a bill in the post which is bigger and larger and not really understanding why that's led, what's led to that. I've certainly lived in areas where when the rates bill comes, there's a fabulous breakdown of exactly where money goes to. So there's a bit of a pie chart which shows the percentages to all sorts of different aspects of running the community. So I'm not aware of anything that exists like that here, but I think that certainly has been very helpful in other areas that I've lived, to really communicate where the money is going, so you can have more incisive conversations with people who are asking the question, why is it as it is. Those are my thoughts.
Fantastic. Any last thoughts on the festivals, arts, markets, events?
Oh yes, I'll be tuning into the Mayor's Picnic on the 20th. Would definitely love to sponsor a writers' festival if there are other people out there who are interested in that, and would just love to hear from people on what they have the energy and interest in doing that they need support for, that perhaps council can help.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sue. Brad?
Yeah, look, we've talked a lot about festivals. I'll just reiterate, you need to get the community behind them. If you want a food and wine festival, we need to get the restaurateurs, the producers, to have a stake in it. Ideally, in a perfect world, it ought to be their festival, and the council assists a little bit with logistics and with some promotion. We can't come up with our own idea and ram it down their throats and expect it to work. So it has to be a community festival, not a council festival. Engage with those stakeholders, have their buy-in, find out what the community want, and we go from there. And I note the comment about rates. Festivals cost money. Lots of things cost money, improvements to sporting pavilions and whatnot, and it's a challenge to get rates down and then come into council and say, let's spend money on this and spend money on that. We have to be conscious that we are spending other people's money, our money. I'm a ratepayer. Here it is. I just happen to have it handy.
Thanks, Stephen. Okay, so with the festivals, etc. Okay, it's a matter of consulting with the community. I really like the ideas I talked about before about a food and wine festival, and it can have gin and beer as well, of course. No problem there. And I don't think it would be, if you've got the right approach and bring the restaurateurs with you on this, talk to them how it would work, etc. I agree with Brad. I think it could work well. Now, when we talk about budgets and things, okay, so I'm down there at the TAFE Institute. We're looking at budgets all the time, and we look at what we can spend and what we can't, and we look at things like new buildings and how we supplement it or we don't, how much we've got left in the bank. All of those things have to be considered. Now, sometimes we take decisions to facilitate perhaps a bit more than we normally would, so because we know that we'll get more students. We know we'll attract more students. We know that it'll be a payback. Now, this is what COVID recovery is all about. You can have, this is not normal times at all. So the very strict housekeeping budget, yes, you've got to be responsible, but you've got to ask the question, what is responsible when you're going out of COVID? Is it responsible to have a very old style, keep as much in the bank as you can, like $70+ million, or is it responsible to say, and look, it's in what you'll read about me, I'm for a rate freeze, or was for a rate freeze for 1 year, and to basically look at a budget and then with the possibility of extending that for another year. And what would that do? More money in people's pockets, people who would actually probably spend money, and it would help local business, local industry. And there's a few other things in that, that's for a bigger show. But I think you've got to look at how you can responsibly stimulate the Frankston economy over the next year or two. That's really important. It's not just spending money willy-nilly, spending it strategically. You may have a lower reserve in the end than what is currently there, but if you're invigorating growth and small business in particular, I think it's the right thing to do responsibly.
Thank you very much, Peter. And as you and I have discussed, I agree in terms of having at least a 12-month rate freeze. Initially, I thought we should have a 2-year one, but then I started crunching some numbers and think that actually a 12-month rate freeze and then a review would make more sense, particularly noting the significant size surpluses that have been generated by council over the last 3 years as well. Yeah. I want to kind of come back to the arts and to the arts and events piece as well. I just want to acknowledge Joe Price did ask. We haven't touched much on the arts outside of festivals and events. I would like to come back to that, maybe as a bit of a conversation around how council should be supporting community organisations and things like that, because I know there's different art societies and maker groups and so on around town. So perhaps we can come back to that. I think having that kind of mix of locally focused events, take grassroots events and the ones that we think can be successful, build them up. Having a couple of signature events a year for Frankston. But most importantly, whatever events we do, making sure that they're linked back to the kind of strategic vision and purpose that we want Frankston to be known for. And I'd love to see more events that reflect, this is where I think the Waterfront Festival has been successful. It's reflective of who we are as a city and the place that we're in as well. It shouldn't just be about doing stuff because we want to keep people distracted. It's about doing stuff that's the right stuff for Frankston. Thank you again, everyone. Thank you to everyone who's watched. Stephen. I hope we've got to all the questions and so on. We are back on Friday at lunchtime for another Candid conversation. Sue, Brad, Peter, thank you very much, and we'll talk again soon.
Good.
Thanks, guys.
See everybody.
See you later.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you.